everybody, welcome to this month of Staffing Monthly, the industry's premier digital magazine, where we bring you actionable insights from thought leaders on the key strategies and tactic and techniques and tools that you need to be aware of to help you grow your agency. And I actually have a special guest here today that is somebody that's been in the industry for nearly 3 decades. She's definitely ascended to the highest levels of leadership with large global recruiting firms. So she's seen kind of all verticals and has had a lot of experience in this industry. But she's also branched out now to be a trainer and a leader to multiple organizations to help them grow and improve. And I actually have Kim Henderson here, who is with the Cobalt Compass Solutions organization that actually, again, provides thought leadership, advisory, guidance, and a lot of practical advice to organizations in the staffing industry. And Kim is going to be talking about a very, very important topic today. So if you're struggling with filling your job orders and you are at wit's end trying to find better talent, this episode is for you. Before we get to that, Kim, thank you so much for being here today.
Dan, thank you for inviting me in. I appreciate it. Really excited to demystify today university recruitment, so staffing companies can engage a little bit better and hopefully place these individuals with their client companies. It can be a tough topic, and many people throw in the towel rather quickly, but hopefully we can lift the shroud and the cloak of mystery on it and provide an actionable game plan to our staffing companies to employ.
And I hope so, and I feel confident that we will. But before we get into that, Kim, can you just give a little bit more of your backstory? Like, how did you get to where you're at today, and like, why is maybe this particular topic so important to you?
Sure, sure. First, let me say, I as a staffing veteran, I absolutely love the industry. Came into it in 1993 and really became addicted to it. And as you mentioned, been really in all different types of roles, anywhere from recruitment to account management to managing teams and business units, selling government solutions and devising that business unit, as well as global and working internationally all the way up to executive leadership. So I have seen quite a lot of different things within the staffing industry, and we've watched a lot of highs and sometimes a few lows if we think back to 2009 and 2001. And with that, the industry, as you know, I mean, it's always evolving, it's always changing, and it's always exciting. It certainly keeps us on our toes and enables us to learn. But to answer your question, getting a little bit more into this topic, we're dealing with, and we'll get a little bit more into this in the presentation, with a deficit of professional skill sets and talent, right? We read every day about the deficit in engineering, healthcare, registered nurse professionals, IT, CPAs, and staffing companies. Obviously we're trained as recruiters to go out, and mine and do referral business and grow our pipelines. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just not enough, right? We have our open roles, and I think there's an undertapped or an untapped, unmined area, talent pool of university recruitment of these new graduates that are spilling out, into the workforce and need jobs. That oftentimes, they're not getting that attention, and we're not connecting with them to get them into our client companies. So I think it's a great resource pool, and oftentimes we overlook it in the staffing industry. So hopefully we can put a plan in place and attack it.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I've got my theories, but why do you think that the staffing industry, by and large, not everyone, there's some agencies out there that do a nice job with this, but by and large, why do you think that most agencies really kind of overlook or discount or don't pay proper attention to the university portals or network?
That's a great question, Dan. And I think the key reason is it's confusing. It can be confusing if you don't know how to approach it or how to attack it or how to partner with them. So I think there's the confusion, which kind of maybe sets in a little bit of fear or trepidation to even get started. And then as we'll go through today, it isn't an overnight sensation. It doesn't happen with one meeting, right? It's kind of like in the account management space, as we go out and prospect and gain new clients. It's rare we get a client in that first meeting, right? It takes time and a lot of emotional deposits and a lot of energy. So I think it's the time component and the confusion component is maybe why they don't move into this talent pool.
That makes sense. So Well, that's great. Well, I'm excited to dig into this and have you kind of demystify it or maybe simplify it so our audience can look to this talent pool, this pipeline of kind of the most modernly trained talent out there, and maybe deploy some of them for our clients. So take it away, Kim.
Absolutely.
Teach
All
me.
right, absolutely. So with that, we're just going to go and just show a few slides here, just to kind of keep it all in order. So we know the topic, but here's an interesting stat that'll kind of dive into, I guess, to what the whole real opportunity is. Don't know if we know it. You know this, but in 2022, about 4 million college students graduated in the US alone. Okay, so
Wow.
that's actually a large pool of individuals. And this is just a little bit of a breakdown of the types of degrees that they came out with. And I think from a staffing agency perspective, we're probably more interested in that BS degree area, BA, BS, about 2 million people, and then of course AA degrees, right? We tend to go and place within that realm. And the interesting stat, Dan, is that in the US today, and I didn't know this till I looked it up and started to read, about 42.8 million people have student loan debt, right? That basically comes out to about 1.7 trillion in loans, right? So these people need jobs, right? If anyone
Yeah.
needs a job, they do.
Yeah.
Right. So with that, why, let's just get, it's a two-way street, right? We're struggling to get connected to these new grads and they're struggling to find jobs. So, what are their barriers? And this will play into a little later on how we can help them. And ultimately it helps ourselves when we place them at client companies. So Dan, do you remember when you first graduated from school, what you knew about finding a job in the job market? Do you recall?
Not much. It was
Yeah.
probably just as much of a mess for me to find a job as it is for recruiters to navigate the portal, which there wasn't really a portal back then.
Yeah, and you're right. I think even today we see people that are senior career and mid career that struggle to find jobs and navigate the system. So think about how that is. Dial that back to someone who's maybe 22 years old and has never had a job before. It's more amplified. So some of their struggles or barriers are a lot of competition, right? Many of them don't have work experience. Let's face it, few skills, right? When Kim and Dan graduated, they probably weren't the highest skilled individuals that were out there. They tend not to know how to network. Sometimes, as we've seen it, they have unrealistic expectations. They
Yeah.
think, Dan, they're going to make 100K and have a VP title and in the corner office, right? And this gets into more of the process. They don't know how to follow up. They really don't know how to put together a compelling resume story, I think we've seen. And they don't really understand the application process, right? How to get through the ATS, how to navigate that. So I think, again, just lack of pure navigation. They don't know how to interview. Okay. You don't just, jump out into the work world and ace an interview. It really does take time and preparation and often insufficient negotiation skills. And Dan, one thing that compelled me throughout this process, this journey that I took to engage with schools is these individuals, these kids, for lack of a better word, are not taught these skills typically as they're leaving the university setting. They don't know it, and professors, it's not necessarily, or they don't feel it's their job to teach it. It doesn't fit into the curriculum. So oftentimes it somewhat falls into the arms of a staffing provider to help with these type of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we alluded to this a moment ago. They're saying that the skills gap, this was skillsgap.com, that the talent shortage is going to total about $8.5 trillion loss for our economy by 2030, right? Think about it. All those unfilled jobs, if you can't find CPAs, you can't find electrical engineers, you can't find registered nurses, ultimately it's going to create a problem. Right.
Yeah.
So if we're all then fishing from I hate to say this, fishing from the same pond, the same candidate pool of people that are on LinkedIn, recruiting out of other companies, I thought it was time, at least for our staffing company, to get a little more resourceful and try to look into this pond and see if we can make a go of it and be successful at it, right? So why do staffing companies and universities struggle, to partner with one another to help graduates find jobs? And Dan, you and I kind of kicked off on this a little bit, at the beginning of the conversation, but I found that within our organization, there are quite a few reasons in addition to what we talked about. Number one, there's a bad understanding by universities and colleges about what staffing companies are and what they do.
Yeah.
Dan, oftentimes they almost have a negative connotation of staffing companies, and they feel like, oh gosh, are they going to take advantage of the students? I've actually been told that before.
Yeah.
They often say, oh my gosh, are you going to, have our students go and pay a fee? They don't really understand how we function and how we work, right? And then we alluded to this a moment ago as we kicked off. From the staffing company perspective, it can be a confusing bureaucratic process to engage with the university if you don't know how to go in and navigate, right? And I think that's why staffing companies pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
And that dovetails in really to the next point. It's, how do you start? And we're going to talk about that step by step. How do you start? What's the first, second, third, fourth thing you need to do?
Right.
And then the next area, we spoke of this, is it takes time, right? It's like going out and getting that 4-star customer in staffing that's going to yield all the placements for us. It takes time. It takes a consistent approach. And oftentimes the staffing companies, I get it, we're there to put up numbers, we're there to put up placements, and show results. And this is not immediate gratification. So sometimes people can lose interest in it. And oftentimes management can lose interest in it too. So, and then here's a final blow. What would you say, Dan, are universities' sole, mission, or what do you think they're hyper focused on, when it comes to the professors and things like that? What are your thoughts?
I would assume that they're hyper focused on, skilling up the next generation workforce and making sure people are leaving the institution with the skills relevant to contribute to society, and basically placing them in jobs. Like I feel like a lot of universities are judged or graded based on, job placement rate. So I would assume those are the priorities. Is that?
Okay. In a perfect world, I would 100% agree with you. I think what we found in engaging with different universities is there are some that are teaching universities that do think like that, but there are others that are more focused on, publishing, research projects, and things along their lines, where maybe their scorecard and metric of getting kids hired after graduation is really not that high. I'll say it's maybe not their top priority. And if you think about it, Dan, oftentimes professors, many of them haven't worked in industry before, right? They go that PhD route and they're teaching, so they don't understand how industry works. So I found that in many cases, sadly and unfortunately, it's not their top mission or top priority to get students jobs, right? A lot of times it's the research, it's the publishing and things of that nature. So realizing that now we've got this disconnect, right? We have these individuals that need jobs, and we have a staffing company that's going, gosh, how do I access them? How do you start, right? I think this is where the rubber hits the road. And I'd say the very first thing we need to do as a staffing company is designate a person. I would say one, maximum 2 people to do this as part of their job. And what I found where failure sets in is if you don't designate this as part of someone's job duties and responsibilities, it becomes everybody and nobody's responsibility, right? And it just doesn't happen. They don't stick with it. So I'd say designate somebody, right? And let's set some goals to it. I mean, that which gets measured gets done. I think we all know that in the staffing environment. Set some goals in place that are attainable for this individual so they don't get discouraged, and step it off and make a process out of it, right? So first, designate a person. The next thing that I found better success with is select a college or university that's, of course, in your city and in close proximity, because we're going to find out in a second, a lot of it takes in-person involvement. So what I'd say is, if you're trying to, you live in Fort Lauderdale, if you're trying to engage with a college up in Jacksonville, probably not going to be successful because you can't really attend the events. One thing I found that helped me as well is a smaller college or university. So in Tampa, you have University of South Florida, but you also have University of Tampa. And something like University of Tampa is a little easier to navigate through because A, it's smaller, and B, it's also a teaching university, right? Instead of one that's more focused on research. So I'd say that's a key point. So Dan, for you, FIU, FAU, probably the big,
Yeah.
the big players where you are, maybe starting with the University of Miami, which is still pretty big, but yet not quite as big, might be a better route, right, for
Yeah.
someone that would say be in your area. You have to, Dan, I think what we learned, put on a mindset of look at it like you're trying to go out and gain a customer, a new client on the sales side. You're going to have to sit down with the university and you're going to have to understand what are their pain points because they have them. You're going to have to educate them, engage them, explain to them the benefits of working with a staffing company, what we do and how we operate. Because I found that quite honestly, they just didn't understand how staffing companies function and what we do and the value we provide. It really took an education, right? And then we alluded to this, realize it's going to take a consistent, targeted outreach program that people are going to have to stick with, right?
Yeah.
And also foster the relationships with key contacts. Again, like you're going out to get a new client. You're going to go in multiple entry points. Like if you're trying to get an IT client, VP, director, CTO, managers, same thing really within the university system, multiple relationships you have to build and then really multiple entry points. And then what we found when we were inconsistent and we didn't stick with it, no results. It really takes consistency. So I think, Dan, it's a mindset. Put the mindset on that it's going to be like getting a new customer from a prospect all the way to a bill paying customer, and it doing all that same type of blocking and tackling, the same type of mechanics that we would do to get a customer. Does that make sense somewhat?
It does. And I think that you hit it right on the head that it's a mindset. And if you realize a lot of times when we have that mindset and we apply it to the client acquisition side, it's because we associate the value of gross margin and all of that stuff with billings with the client, right? But ultimately, the value is in our pipeline, our talent pipeline. And if we look at how much value can be extracted out of, this pipeline, I think that we would actually probably give it more attention. So I think that mindset is the real key there.
Absolutely. So I guess in summary, again, designate somebody, right,
Yeah.
to do this as their job, start local, and put that mindset on of engage, educate, find pain points and realize it's kind of a long-term game. It's a long game. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next thing we have to do, and I don't want people that are out here listening that may have experience with this to start running for the hills screaming when I mentioned handshake. Handshake is, and I will say this, we'll call it the price of entry.
Yeah.
Okay, so notice how when we work with a client, oftentimes they say, hey, Dan, you need to complete this RFI, you need to complete this RFP or this vendor form. And we, begrudgingly do it because it's the price of entry to go and get in to start having engagement and building relationships. Engage the mindset that handshake is just that. It's the price of entry to go and access students. And we kind of have to check the box a little bit, right? But in terms of what it is for the people that may not be familiar, it's a website where students can go and find internship listings, job listings. It's really an online career management system for students. And right now it's got about 12 million registered students with obviously, many educational institutions that belong to it. So again, to check that box, I hate to put it that way, we need to register as an employer, but we need to look at it like, again, as we said, like we're filling out an RFI or RFP for the customer, but liken it to your experience on LinkedIn, okay? If we're out on LinkedIn and we just put our profile out there, really doesn't attract too many clients. But as a staffing company, the more you're active on LinkedIn, posting jobs, posting information about your clients, posting information about your company, the more it attracts and draws people in, right? There's find and there's attract. So it's the same way here. Register, but also go out there and post jobs on Handshake, create some type of relationships, source and message candidates, so you can drive attendance at your events. So just think of it like you would LinkedIn, and the way you post and engage on LinkedIn is probably a really good similarity, in terms of how to address the whole handshake thing. Okay. So it's a price of entry. It's something that we have to do and keep up, but it's really not exactly where, as we know, all the relationship and all the magic and the placements actually happen. So we've got to do it. We've covered it. So we'll move on to some of the more fun things. Okay. So the very first thing I would do after getting that designated person and targeting a local university is, and it's typically on the website, Dan, they either call it corporate outreach or industry outreach or career placement services. That's your starting point. So reach out to that individual or team that runs that office. And just like you would a prospect, go out there and meet them. It could be obviously over Zoom, but in person is great. Get in front of them and start to understand how their university functions from a job standpoint, right? How they find their students positions. What's their process? Because what I found is most universities really differ. There's different nuances of how to engage. So this is kind of like that intake call of the prospect, right? What's important to them. What are their struggles? What are their pain points? How do we engage with them step by step? What do they recommend? And so that corporate outreach office is going to be so key to launch the relationship. Also, believe it or not, they have that third bullet. You're going, gosh, misconceptions on staffing companies. They really do have a lot of misconceptions. And we mentioned that they think we, make the students pay fees. I met with one university where they had a bad experience with a staffing company. They had a staffing company individual that came out and did a career fair, and they felt that staffing company acted unprofessionally in a few instances. So they will have some preconceived notions about what it is we do. And that's something, of course, we want to ask them to make certain if there's an obstacle or objection there that we can overcome it. After that, after going and talking with corporate outreach and understanding their process to engage with the deans or assistant deans of specific colleges that you're interested in, right? So let's say you place engineering resources, dean of engineering, or let's say you place CPAs in finance and accounting. Go to the dean of accounting. And typically what we found, Dan, is these individuals will talk to you, they'll meet with you, and if the dean won't, the assistant dean typically will. Again, formulating another relationship that's actually drilling down to get access to the students. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it actually makes a ton of sense. It's just like honestly, it's just like a targeted sales campaign.
You're exactly right. It's no different. It's just a different client, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And then so we talked, we're drilling down to the deans. We found some success with meeting with individual professors as well. Oftentimes, it's hard for prospects to want to meet with us in staffing, right? We all do the cold calling and typically sometimes we have success and sometimes we really have to work at it. What I found is they tend to be a little more open to meeting with you than say, an industry customer would. So that's a good thing, on our side, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes there are university resource groups as well as career advisement groups. Not all colleges have them. Some do. So if there's a university resource group, I would reach out to them as well and introduce yourself. Some also have career advisors. These are also great people to network with, meet. And again, if you can't meet them in person, Zoom works. The key is to start the dialogue and start the relationship, right? And then there's also business related fraternities and sororities. And I think those get overlooked, right? I think one of the business ones is Delta Sigma Pi. And they have all kinds of activities for their folks that are majoring in accounting and finance and business administration, where employers and staffing companies can go and meet and engage with them from a career fair perspective. So again, there's a lot of value in those business related sororities and fraternities. There's also alumni chapters that you can join as well. And again, I think it's all, these are all avenues in, right? The professors, the deans, the assistant deans, the resource group, career advisors, corporate outreach. But I think at all levels, it's just like a prospect. Here's the value we can add. Here's what we can do. Here's how we can help you. Here's how we can help the students. But tell us, what are your pain points? Where can we provide value to you? And it really does start to get the dialogue going, and it does start to demystify it a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a great one. So we found tons of value in this. And while staffing companies may struggle with this, I'll tell you how we can tie it into to our client companies. So there's industry organizations that are focused on engagement with student chapters, like the Institute for Electrical Engineers, IEEE. And oftentimes for like an IT individual or an engineer to graduate, they have to do a senior design project, right? And where a staffing company might not be able to help with that, we could go to our client companies and say, hey, Mr. Client, you're looking for, electrical engineers to go hire in your manufacturing facility. How about you give us one of your projects and we'll team you up with the university and, and engage the students on the project, helps them graduate, helps them get experience. And then what's in it for the client is we're giving a little value add to the client then, because we're connecting them to the students that they may very well take interest in and want to hire one or two of them after they graduate. So these projects and drawing that bridge between the client company and the university was really, really helpful and really key for us, right?
That's a novel approach. That makes a ton of sense.
Exactly. And the client, it was, you'd think you may worry that they would view it as oh gosh, we're bothering them. No, it's completely the opposite. It turned out to be a really good value add that we're saying, hey, Mr. Client, we realize and recognize that you're struggling, from a standpoint of finding these resources, and it's finite. We're not producing tons of electrical engineers every day. How about you take your project that you need help on and engage this group of students and see what they can produce for you. So it turned out to be really, really helpful. So just something to definitely consider.
For sure.
Okay. And then ultimately, judging these projects, right? At the end of it, judging it from an industry perspective. And we talked about, getting them involved to go and derive some value add. Here's a key one too, Dan. Once a staffing company is actually able, and a client company, to get into the university system and navigate, participating in curriculum guidance type of meetings. So what we mean by that is, let's say a manufacturing facility is working with a staffing company to partner in the university system, basically working with the deans and assistant deans and professors saying, hey, here are the skill sets that industry needs. You need to be teaching these skills, X, Y, and Z, to your engineers or to your CPAs or to your IT people. So when they come out, they have the skills that we're looking to hire. So once you do that, you can move up that value chain and start to provide them guidance in what their curriculum should look like. Okay. And then being a panel speaker. I don't know, Dan, if you obviously do quite a bit of speaking on many, many panels, but we found some success in being a speaker at some of these events, right? And then ultimately, as far as being a speaker, you don't have to go and, go on LinkedIn and try to draw the students in. The career resource group will do the advertising for you. So it's really not that much work. So being a panel speaker is another great way to go and add value, whether you're a staffing company or a client company. Okay. So here is a really key area, Dan, I wanted to go over. We spoke earlier about how these individuals really don't know how to navigate the job space. Again, they're 22 years old. They don't know how to do a resume or they don't necessarily know how to interview. Staffing companies can offer these virtual career development seminars to provide value to the university and to the students, right? Teach students how to write a compelling resume, how to interview, how to apply to jobs through an ATS. Tremendous value in that for them and for the college, right? Providing internships and co-ops. not only at your client companies, which is the third bullet, but the second one, at your own company. I don't know about you, but we were able to, in our staffing company, to get many of our new hires, our new recruiters and new AMs fresh out of college and train them to our methodology and make some pretty darn good, solid recruiters and account managers. So again, don't overlook or underestimate the value of providing these seminars and helping them in the internships, because it really can provide value to us as well as to the client companies. Okay.
Yeah, that makes a
And
ton of sense.
yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned a second ago, excuse me, we don't have to go and promote these events and spend a ton of time. Really, typically the professors, excuse me, in the corporate career office, they can go and sign students up for the event and help you out with that. So again, I alluded to this earlier. We know we have to make placements. We know we have to put up numbers. We know there's always a shortage of time. So if we're conducting a webinar and helping students to go and say, put together a resume and interview well, lean on these professors, lean on the corporate career office to sign the students up. So that's less legwork that you have to do, right? So again, just trying to make it a little easier, realizing that we all have day jobs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So recruitment activities, a lot of staffing companies, again, we're going through all these different steps and ways to engage. This is another way. And I feel like, it's money left on the table, washing off the dock, because staffing companies typically don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Investing in the career fairs and really doing it properly, Dan, right? You do have to pay, you do have to post jobs, you do have to do a little bit of advertising, because in essence, you're competing for the graduates with all the other companies that are out there, right? So if XYZ staffing is out there, they're probably at a booth next to Deloitte, Accenture, and many other players in the markets. They do need to go and differentiate a bit, right? Simple things, Dan. Creating QR codes for easier information sharing. It's not, 1999 anymore, right? That's how students are going to go and learn about you, learn about your staffing company, learn about your client companies, having that QR code readily available. And then the fourth bullet, I think we all embrace LinkedIn is being amazing for so many different things to help us do our jobs. Same thing for college recruitment. Posting the jobs on LinkedIn, showing our company activity, highlighting our clients. Again, that's just going to go and draw students in, create that excitement, create that energy, and attract them to us, right? I'm all about going out and finding it and doing the hard work, but let's make it easy on ourselves. Use LinkedIn as a tool and attract them to us. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And recruitment activities, I feel like there's a lot more money there that we typically, as staffers, kind of, don't get heavily vested in, unfortunately. Okay.
Mm.
And then, in addition to those large career fairs, Dan, I've noticed that there'll be a lot of just smaller on-site recruitment activities that colleges can have.
Yeah.
And if you're dialed in through that career resource office, and again, deans, and through, we talked about those panels and associations like IEEE that I mentioned for engineers, you're going to learn about those on-site events pretty quickly. And those are great because you don't have the Deloittes and all the big players there. It's usually a much smaller playing field to go and do recruitment from. So again, it's all about the engagement. Okay. So here's another leg of the stool. So in many industries, as you know, obviously there's a huge focus on DE&I. And especially, let's say if someone's in a manufacturing environment and they've got government contracts and they have DE&I information and data that they have to show. So I think it's another leg of the stool. And in conjunction with all the other things we talked about, there's a way to tap into those diverse candidate pools. So number one, determine what you want your strategy to be there, right? Like we said a moment ago, you can't be all things to all people. You can't just go in with like a scatter shot. It has to be, pointed. So what demographic are you after? Do you have some type of a tracking system to determine, your success rate at this? And then begin to start to engage with like the diversity areas within universities, right? And they all have that. So again, reaching out there, introducing yourself. Oftentimes in many cities, there's historically Black colleges HBCUs that you can reach out to as well. And then finally, there's a lot of what we mentioned a moment ago, specific industry groups like IEEE for engineering. There's also diverse academic groups, right? Like Society of Hispanic Engineers, National Society, and they have chapters, say at University of South Florida, University of Tampa, probably at every major university out there. So again, that's another mechanism, another group, another subset association that we can kind of dial into and go out and make ourselves known and start to work to build, trust of the students and also trust of the whole university. So just a couple notes there, because I know that is important to folks doing government contracts or also working in the financial services sector. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So here's a way to maybe put it all together, I guess, in our minds, right? In terms of some of the things that we spoke of. It does take consistent communication. If we think we're going to start and stop, we're probably not going to get much leverage or get much traction, right? Kind of like reaching out to a prospect. If we talk to them in November and then we don't reach out again until the month of May, we're pretty much starting at ground zero every single time. This is the same type of thing. Consistent, ongoing communication with those various people that we talked about. It's many different contacts. It's many different departments, right? From career outreach to the deans, to the professors, to the professional associations, to the professional, business related fraternities, sororities, to the DEI office. It's really, guys, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? Just like Dan, you wouldn't go in to meet the CTO and then never meet his VPs, directors, or managers if you were trying to do, IT contract staffing, right? Following up with all those contacts and all those departments consistently. Okay. Again, no different than a client. We've got to continually educate and inform not only the students, but these university leaders in order to be able to build the relationships with them. It's kind of like, again, what's in it for them? How's this going to bring value to them? And as Dan mentioned earlier, if it's a university that actually has metrics in place for getting students hired, like your teaching universities typically do, they're going to care because you're helping them increase their numbers to go and deploy students and help students find jobs, right? And the interesting thing that I found doing this is the more you do it, success begets more success, right? It gets easier and easier because you start navigating their system and they start making introductions for you to other members of the university team. So it does get easier. I absolutely promise that. And then providing value-added services. We all do that with our customers, right? We'll give them a salary guide. We'll highlight them in an article. We'll maybe put them on our staffing podcast. All these things to add value. Same thing in this scenario, right? Taking the individuals, these students, resume workshops, interviewing workshops, how to get through the ATS workshops, all these different types of things that add value. And universities oftentimes will need information as well. Like we talked about, putting yourself on a panel to be a curriculum advisor. They need that information. They don't know what industry is looking for. They don't know if a Java skill set's any more important or needed than a .NET skill set, right? So we're kind of the eyes and ears of industry. So if we can go out there and help them guide their curriculum and produce students that have the skill sets that our clients need, it's a win-win for everybody, right? And another piece of putting it all together, and I neglected to mention this early, but I don't want to overlook it. Most staffing companies, or many, do permanent placement and contract placement as well. I found that the contract side took a little extra education and a little extra, information and trust building with universities. But I would say is, don't look at it with your mindset or mentality that I want to go and place all students in a perm role. Oftentimes, a contract role can be a great thing for a student, right? And we can educate and sell them on that, and also educate the university on it. In addition, that contract roles can turn into permanent roles. It's a great way for a student to get experience. It's a great way for them to, determine if they want to stay at a company. Dan, I don't know about you, but my very first job right outside of college, was a financial analyst, and it was a contract to hire role. So I was a contractor when I first got a job, and it turned into a perm role, so it turned out great. But I think we overlook that as a staffing company, and the school will definitely overlook it if we don't educate. So how about
Yeah.
you, Dan? Perm role or contract?
It's funny. So I share a similar story to you as well. I actually started out as a contractor and didn't even know it. I before I even got into this industry, I actually was a temp somewhere and didn't even realize it. But yeah, I think that, both avenues provide enough value to this pipeline.
Absolutely. Yeah. To the client and to the student. And the great news is, if you or me or you're a student in contract role, you may do it for 6 months and go, ooh, I don't know that this is the right place for me, but you gain the experience and then you can say finish the contract and move on to something else if it's not the right role. But hopefully it is and it turns into a permanent job. Okay. Lessons learned, guys, this didn't happen overnight. So here are some of the things that, again, that we learn and I learned the hard way, right? Here's what's not going to work. Inconsistency, non-communication, not going on site. It will take effort. You will have to go on site. You will have to participate in the career fairs and do the webinars and things like that. I think it's the standpoint of, don't have the short-term mentality. It is the long game. And if you embrace it as such, realize that ultimately the reward's going to be all these candidates that you're going to be able to place with your client companies, which ultimately, we get paid for placements. It's just going to take some time. So I think, what doesn't work is not putting in the work and a short-term mindset. So try to banish that from your overall approach, and you'll have a lot greater success. So Dan, if I had to boil it all down into about 5 or 6 action steps that somebody can do tomorrow, right, to kind of get going with this, because we talked about a lot of different entry points and a lot of different things. Here's what I'd say. Okay. First, designate that person is your college recruitment lead within your staffing company. It can be 2 people. That's okay. Because sometimes I think if you have a partner or teammate to do things with, it's a little more fun. But make sure you designate someone. Put some goals on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, don't run for the hills. Realize registering on Handshake is just kind of the price of admission, right? We have to do it, and we kind of need to post jobs there to get the engagement. It's not the be all end all that's going to end up yielding you the placements, but it's the starting point. It's filling out that vendor form, right? Or filling out that RFI that we don't like to do, but we know we have to. Price of entry. Okay. Third thing, contact and set introductions with the corporate outreach, industry outreach, career advisor, career outreach office. It'll be called something different. Typically in most universities, they all have their own name for it, but you get the gist. They're the ones that are responsible for connecting industry with students. And those employment managers and career advisors, and there are really the ones that are going to be we'll call it your advocate or your champion, right? In our sales process, we have all our different buyers. That right there, those are the champions, those are the advocates, the people that can help you navigate the system and introduce you to people and really want you to succeed and help you to succeed and win at this, right? So key step right there. Those become your new best friends. Okay. And then beyond that, drilling down one step lower, meeting the deans, meeting the assistant deans, meeting the professors, dialing into those professors so they can help you get on those panels and engage with the students, right? It's about access, and they can help you get that access, right? Okay. And then finally, challenge yourself. I always say this, challenge yourself. If something's uncomfortable, we tend not to like it. Let's face it, we don't do things we don't want to do. And the things we like to do, like go to a football game or play golf, we tend to do that with, rapid enthusiasm. Challenge yourself to do one recruitment event monthly, or a networking event, or a virtual event. Challenge yourself to do something monthly that engages beyond just the individual meetings, right? Because it will pay dividends. It builds on top of itself. So those are the 5 things that I would say that you could start to do tomorrow, just to get kicked off and kind of get out of the inertia, right? And get action to happen. Okay. And well, Dan, what questions would you have related to this?
So, Kim, I gotta say, I mean, that was an incredibly comprehensive, presentation and really an entire strategy with a tactical deployment plan. So I think you did a fantastic job. So really my main question is if somebody is watching this and they're like, wow, I didn't realize that I could, deploy a recruitment strategy into the university system and sort of mine some maybe untapped talent to place at our clients, like how, and they want to learn more about this from you, like how do they get in touch with you? What is the best way to reach out?
Oh, sure, thank you. I'd be happy to share, thoughts or best practices or tips with anyone that would be looking to partner with these universities and start to recruit and find this talent pool. I'm on LinkedIn, and there's my LinkedIn URL, and then there is my direct email. So between email and LinkedIn, that's all day long and into the evening. So that would be a great way. Happy to help and engage with anybody that is stuck. Doesn't struggling to get started, or maybe someone that's midway through the process and maybe they've hit a wall and they're looking to go and bounce ideas and determine what the next steps should be. Happy to do that.
I love it. And do you have like any additional like handouts, giveaways, like other collateral that kind of talks to this, or could we get maybe a copy of the slides for anyone that wants to download it and really make it their playbook?
Absolutely. So I will make certain, Dan, that you have the slides, and that way someone can hopefully use that as a bit of a guide, step by step. Say, okay, I did this, I did that. Oh wait, let me try this particular inroad. But in addition to that, Dan, we haven't done it yet, but I do a lot of work with the American Staffing Association, and we formed a subcommittee on this topic. Believe it or not. And we're going to put together, we're meeting in December to put together a toolkit for staffing companies with best practices to start to engage in university recruitment. So what I'd say is well, once we have that toolkit built, I will make certain that you have it because it'll be for staffing company usage. And then we can share it with all of our recruitment companies out there and they can use it. So I think people are starting to realize there's money here. It helps the students and it helps our clients and it helps us as staffers.
Yeah, it's a win all the way around, Kim. And I really appreciate you sharing this strategy and tactic with our audience today. And I'm grateful that you were here.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for inviting me in. I appreciate the opportunity and wish everybody great luck in tapping into our university network to recruit graduates. You'll do amazing and you'll make money and get people jobs in the process. So good luck. You'll do well. Thank you.